Welcome to the Super GT300 Online Championship. This is Carsten talking. Let's see the grid for Brands Hatch. In pole, Flanked, followed by Da Vinci. In third position, Skang. In fourth, Fgta, a new driver. Then we have Tobias. Kossu, another driver that had an incredible good qualifying session, followed by our Logic. Jona, that had minus 30 horsepower. Then Karsten, that can't be happy of his grid. PJ, Chip, Filipino, awful qualifying session from him. Snake, Smiley, incredibly slow in qualifying but fast in race. Vickers and Pubes. Few of these drivers will have problems along the race. PJ and Fgta will have technical problems. PJ succumbing due to some engine problem, and Fgta had some problem with his windshield screen or something like that. He couldn't go on. Let's see first lap. Everything smooth as usual in this series, no major crash at the first turns. Everything seems clean. We're watching Karsten not having a good start, being pressed by Filipino. In front of them there are Fgta already having some problem with the visibility, going wide and out. Let's see, is re-entry a bit dangerous? No, everything clean. In front of Karsten there's Kossu that had a good start. Here we are in front with Flanked that managed to take first position from and keep it, followed by Skang, Da Vinci will start his one, and Tobias that had a great first stint of race. As you see, these four were managing to create quite a big gap early on. Infighting here can cost really precious seconds. Let's look back. This is Filipino and Karsten on lap 2, fighting for 10th place. Karsten is trying to close the gap to Jona in front of him. Jona had minus 30 of powers, was a big penalty, but Mazda here was really fast, so not as bad as one might thought. Some cars going a little wide in these turns, rising some sand. Filipino being really aggressive. At the start of the race he was quite faster than Karsten, to be honest, but he lacked concentration or maybe long range pace, something like that. Here Karsten defending by taking a longer and faster out line. It was quite a tight group. Behind them, Gavin was closing the gap. Smiley was having his issues trying to defend from Snake. Smiley had an incredibly slow start, but his pace was really good, and he did great. You can see the standings at lap 3 on the right. And here on the rest of the screen, the beautiful pass from Smiley, and then going wide. And there's a Filipino too that crashed. A lot of things happening at the same time. Let's see what happened. Filipino was trying to attack Karsten, going a little wide there, nothing major, approaching this blind turn, braking lately, touching grass and losing car. This is quite an usual error here, common mistake really, almost all drivers made it. Here we have Kosu and PJ fighting, and PJ somehow pushing out Kosu. Kosu had a great restart and this is quite a shame. Let's see what happened. This PJ tapping and sending wide Kosu. Let's see from another view. Yes. He couldn't control his car slipping. Not the best things to do, to say. So there's a lot of laps. That was just the start of the race. And here we are watching Kosu and Logic fighting on lap 6. Logic had a great pace. Not much to say about that. He was steady, fast all the time, and his final result, the 3rd position, is well deserved. Here was running in 6th position. Costa 2 had a great pace, like PJ and TDZ. All the newcomers actually showed a good pace. Unexpectedly good, to be honest, but lacked some training on long race like these ones and made too much of mistakes. Now Logic, after drafting Kosu, is taking a better line out of the turn, shorter and faster, and going on the inside on turn 1. Yes, really clean, looks easy. It wasn't at all. And then defending from Kosu. Let's see what will happen now. On lap 6, Da Vinci, that was in 3rd position brilliantly, loses his car. Garaya is incredibly fast overall on all tracks, but is quite a lemon. See, he just loses it and goes straight out of the track. It's quite a lemon to control for a whole race. So how can you not be cheering up for these drivers on such a difficult car, doing such incredible fast times and wonderful races? On lap 6, Chip, another newcomer that was doing great, crashes under pressure from Snake, I think. Here going wide turn 1, touching some sand, and then a small walk on the grass for him, losing precious time and positions. On lap 7 there's Smiley that starts his recovery from 13th place. He qualified and starts with Gavin. Smiley had a -10 penalty on his horsepowers, so he had to make good use of draft. In this case it's Gavin's once, and here Gavin makes a mistake, goes wide, touches some sand and lets through. On lap 8, Publius, another newcomer that was doing great. I think that right now he was in 9th position, loses his car quite suddenly, I would say, and this allows for Chip to close in and pass him after the stride, after drafting him. There's a big difference in speed, so quite an easy pass, no problems at all. Fgta here was not good. Nothing to say about that. It was trashing his tires in something like 6 tires, 6 laps. Here we have Karsten and Da Vinci. Karsten had really long and interesting battles with Da Vinci and Smiley all along the race. Actually, he was constantly slowing down both of them, trying to defend all the ways he could, as long as it was correct, I mean. But it was quite interesting for him, and I hope for Da Vinci and Smiley too. It was fun. Maybe it was frustrating for them, but still. Right now Karsten had a big advantage over Smiley. And here is where Da Vinci manages to pass Karsten. Da Vinci would stop early and make an extra stop compared to other drivers. A different strategy that might have paid off if he didn't crash so often. Let's move on lap 12. Filipino and Gavin and Snake in front of them. Here Filipino trying to get back in the front positions. You saw him sliding out of the turn, pushing hard. Here we are on board with Gavin, attacking Snake. A little fast forward. Filipino, Snake has managed to take some little gap. Filipino drafting Gavin, approaching turn 1, going outside then inside, outbraking and making one of the beautiful passes of this race day, probably the best one. Well done, that was worth 10th place. On lap 15, Skeng and Flanked were fleeing alone, basically, with just Tobias behind them. And here Skeng was taking draft from Flanked, even if he was with some horsepower penalties. He didn't feel it as much as you could think, being such an incredible driver. And here on turn 4 he somehow easily manages to pass Flanked. At least it looked easily, but it took a lot of pressure from him. On lap 22 there was some shuffling in the position due to pit stops, and there is Karsten trying to overtake Chip as soon as possible in his effort to close on Yona. In the first stints it looked like Karsten could fight with Yona for the upper positions. Then a stupid mistake he made while fighting with Logic costed him a crash, his only mistake in the race that costed him the front positions. Here Karsten had a bad exit from that turn and manages to pass here. I think that is the only pass we saw in that part of the track. It's not an easy part. On lap 26 Logic loses his car and crashes quite badly, as you can see. This is what will happen with what will allow Yona to pass him and Karsten to close on him. And while trying to overtake him, Karsten will make his decisive mistake that we are going to see in just a moment. Here it is. He was taking a faster line and being really aggressive behind Logic, and then made a little small mistake on the blind turn, going a little wide, touching grass, and there's not much you can do after touching grass there, besides crashing, I mean. Let's move forward to lap 29, Flanked and Skeng still battling. It is now time for Flanked to overtake Skeng for first place. These two were making a different race actually from all the others. Here Skang gets a little wide, touching grass, and great control from him. Two incredible controls, and Flanked easily passes Skang and gets back in first position. On lap 30, and on and on and on for something like 10 or 12 laps. Karsten and Smiley were fighting for their position. I won't say much, I'll just put here a few interesting parts to take a look at. Karsten was a little slower than Smiley. Both cars were at minus 10 horsepower, and with that little draft from Karsten, it was quite impossible for Karsten to pull away. With this, Smiley was completing an incredibly come back from back positions. Taking shorter line on turn 1. Karsten having a longer but faster accelerating one. Then on the hills there is a college of different laps. Just showing a little bit. I had a lot of fun here. Karsten touching grass, then taking really short line here, accelerating slower. It was exciting, it was fun. I hope it is interesting to watch too. As the battle dragged on, the worst were Karsten tires. Fgta being quite cruel on them. Still, a good defensive line can mean a lot here at Brands. It is not an easy place to pass. Let's move to lap 32. Logic and Yona fighting. Logic recovering from his earlier crash. Yona being low on horsepower. You can imagine how these things will go. After that, here Logic gets a far better exit from this turn. He easily manages to draft and over accelerate Yona for a beautiful clean pass. Yona makes no resistance. Actually he had no chance but to let Logic through. On lap 34 there's the first lap drivers. Skang and Flanked are trying to overtake them as soon as possible. This is Gavin letting space for the two leaders to go through. Everything went smoothly, but Skang somehow had a better exit from the following turn, and so he manages to close in on Flanked. And here Flanked touching some grass and has to lift off and letting Skang through. You can't make even the smallest mistake if you have Skang behind you. On lap 34 there's Pubes and Gavin. Pubes seems to have fresher tires. You can see here going on the inside a little too much of energy with that tap for passing, but nothing major here. On lap 49 Tobias and Yona fighting. Tobias had a crash. He told us in an interview that he had some problems with his well, I have no clue if they managed to fix it in the boxes, but he was back on track and fast. And here, after a better exit from last turn, manages to draft and easily pass Yona, getting back in fourth position. Not bad, I would say. Behind them there's Da Vinci, Smiley, Karsten, Sportchip and Filipino. On lap 50, after a great battle, while trying to overtake Yona. Da Vinci loses his car again. Da Vinci, as already said, opted for a free pit stops that made him incredibly fast on track and actually had the fastest lap in race, but required from him to run at the fastest speed he could all the time. And here, after his crash, there's Karsten closing in by. Here Karsten was trying to put some pressure on Da Vinci. It was just back from his previous crash, probably tires not in temperature or dirty. This brought him to make another mistake and letting Karsten through. Right now Karsten snatched 7th position, Da Vinci in 8th. On lap 15 we have Gavin and Filipino fighting. And Filipino went too wide on the turn on the grass, so he has to lift off, and Gavin manages to get a good new position. On lap 56, Pubes and Gavin fighting for position, and here Pubes being real aggressive, both cars about to be lapped by, I think that was Logic Line. Here Pubes tries to get to the inside, brakes, and while braking taps Gavin. This is the second time it happens, so it might be worth a warning for Pubes. It is really important to make sure that your passes do not cause contacts. Now we are watching last lap. Karsten was cursing both Skank and Flanker for being so fast and having to do an extra lap again. Karsten had absolutely no tires, and Da Vinci, with his one more pit stop strategy, had fresher tires and was incredibly faster. This is last lap, last corners. You see Da Vinci being able to draft. There's a lapper car that was moving left and right in front of Karsten, so a tap between Da Vinci and Karsten, but there's no time for Da Vinci to snatch 7th position, and it is the end of the race. We are watching together how it ended. Flanked won in front of Skang, then Logic, Tobias, Jonas, Miley, Karsten, Da Vinci, Sportchip, Filipino, Vickers, Gavin. Then we have Snake, Kossu, and in last position Pubes. Just 2 retired in this race. It was a beautiful race. It was entertaining, very tiring to comment and to edit the video, but I hope everything will enjoy it. It was a pleasure. See you next week from Karsten. Bye.